making bread, making basic white bread, a £1 loaf in the Breadman. It's a simple basic recipe. I believe it comes in the handbook of the Breadman itself. It seems to be a long walk from the camera to the kitchen. Oh, there he is. So I use two sets of measuring spoons. One is the wet on your right, the one is the wet set, the one on your left is the dry set. So let's put our short list of ingredients together. Start with the sugar. The salt. It's just ordinary supermarket oil, cheapest I could find. And as Grandma used to say, one for the pot. Now I use the Fleischmann bread machine yeast, and the recipe calls for exactly 1 teaspoon. You need to get for the Breadman, you need to get a yeast and learn it. And it's quite critical that you get it exactly right. Too little or too much yeast can really affect the loaf. Or the outcome of the loaf, I should say. Alright, I think we're ready to start getting everything into the Breadman. There's the ingredient summary. I don't use tap water anymore for consumption. Alrighty, so it's not the bread machine that's wobbling, it's the stupid way I was using the tripod. Now the ingredients do have to go into the bread machine in a very specific order. The water and the oil go at the bottom. About half the flour, it's not critical. Salt and sugar. rest of the flour and the yeast on the top. Do it this way, the Breadman takes care of everything, and every time you get a great loaf. So let's go now to program 1. We'll select the 1 pound loaf, medium. Off we go. Now if you look at the specifications for that program, you see I reverse engineered it a little bit. And it turns out that there are 3 kneads. The final one is only 30 seconds long, and here it is going now, and it's just a little knead at the very end of the kneading cycle to just settle the loaf in the bottom of the pan where it can rise successfully. And so after that knead, I'm going to take out the paddle to avoid leaving a huge hole in the bottom of the loaf when we're finished. Out she comes. Now, how you leave that dough at this point will be the shape of the final loaf, so try and keep it tidy. Now the program's going to run for another hour and 50 minutes, and at the end of it we're going to have a 1 pound loaf. Boom, just like that. Now it has to come out and stand for 30 minutes. You can leave it in the machine if you've cooked it while you're out. It will keep the bread warm for you and stop it getting soggy at the bottom. But if you pull it out, the bread is going to start cooling down. That means the moisture in it is going to start condensing, and it's all going to head to the bottom of the loaf. And I found the best way to get it out is just leave it on its side for about 5 minutes. Then it'll just fall out on its own. You don't have to knock it around or anything to get it out. You need a small wire rack. Bread should rest for at least 30 minutes, and at this point you should put a cloth over it. Otherwise, just the little organisms that circulate around in the air all around us every day are going to settle on the top of the loaf, and it'll go moldy a lot quicker. Now I put it in this container way too early. That loaf is not going to bode well, and it's not going to keep long either, only a few days. But if you keep it in a Tupperware container like this, it can last up to a week, as long as you were careful to leave the cloth over it while it was on the rack. I'll show you what happens if you don't let it cool down all the way. You still get this sticky mess inside. The bread hasn't quite finished cooking itself yet. You can see how gooey it is. All that will go away if you just leave it on its own for 30 minutes, and you'll get a lovely, easy to cut that looks just like a shop-bought loaf. It's a great even texture. The Breadman does a really great job. And if we leave these both overnight, the loaf inside the Tupperware container will be all squishy, and that one slice I cut off will be tool grade steel type stuff.